Hi, so here I am giving you a beautiful presentation on the resume. So just to start off, I'm not even going to turn the slide yet. I just want to discuss that, obviously as an owner of my business, the staffing business, Therapeutic Resources, I have many thousands of resumes that come through every week that we look at, that we critique, that we are compelled to bring a person in for an interview, or we just chuck it in the garbage. It's so interesting that a resume is such an introduction to each person. And if your resume isn't perfect, with how it's lined up, how it looks, what it says, the content, all of these things contribute to looking or representing you. So it's so important that this presentation is given because, like I'm saying, you're going to graduate and you're going to want to present yourself to many different sites for job interviews, and you want them to be compelled by your resume to meet you. I mean, once they get that resume, they're like, oh my God, wow, I want to bring this person in for an interview. So that's what you want to convey, and that's what I'm going to show you today. So like I said, that the resume is a reflection and a first impression of who you are, either obviously by email or on paper. Because even when you email someone your resume, you perhaps are called in for an interview because of that resume, you want to bring a resume on paper anyway. So I'm going to discuss paper as well because you have to bring it along with you. But if you look at this at first glance, let's pretend you are a human resources director or you're the director of your OT department. You're going to be looking for somebody, perhaps, and you're going to ask for resumes. Submit your resume. And as you see here, this resume, even before you read through it and you look at the content, you're looking at the design and the font, the way it's set up, the bullet points on the left. As you can see, some things are actually put in bold print, which might mean that it's more important to the reader. So there's different ways to look at this resume, but at first glance, you want to see that, this seems neat and organized. Maybe that means the person is neat and organized. Gee, I would like that trait as part of my department. So you could see that, even this will be put on a pile to be read later. And then if it's a mess, it's going to be put on the left pile to be thrown out. And you don't want to end up on that pile. So we're going to go through this piece by piece. Sometimes resumes spill over onto a second page. And the reason I'm showing you this is because if you have a lot to offer, maybe this is your second career as occupational therapy, you want to be able to explain that you've had another career, that these are the points that you participated in. So it's okay to spill over onto a second page. I know that there's like this hard and fast rule about only one page, but that's because people who are in this kind of situation, like a human resources person or a director, they don't want to read through tons and tons of papers and information. They want it to be really quick and to the point. So again, what this resume really is a snapshot of who you are. Literally a snapshot. So you could see this one, it spills over onto 2 pages, but it's nicely lined up. Again, they use the bullet points on the side. They put they also use the bold print to highlight more important parts. They put a line on top, if you see that, the line on top, and then a line on the last page. It should not be red, by the way. I think that was a mistake, because in our field we were told that red implies blood. So we never want to use any red ink or red font or anything like that. But anyway, up here on the top where the name is supposed to be, then that person drew a line. That's a very nice kind of look also. There's some white space, which is okay. Maybe these indents there's too much white space over here, so maybe you kind of want to pull it out a little bit more. Sometimes we want to look at the margins because you don't want to have too much white space like this, this, because sometimes that would imply, gee, there's not enough meat to this person. That person maybe didn't have enough experience to be in my department. So you want to pay attention even to margins that will speak to somebody. But let's keep going. Here's two resumes, one on each side, and I wanted to show you, just to look at it at a glance, again, not to read into it, but if you note that at first glance, forget this, I did that with her name, but look at the font that this girl used. It's very like squiggly and swirly and romantic, and it kind of really has no bearing on an occupational therapy resume. This kind of font is used for a love letter or some kind of like, old ancient time of the 1800s, I don't know, document or something, but we don't use that as a very straightforward font to imply I'm serious about what I do and here's my information. So we use, and on the right hand side you can see that we use a different font, which is I think that Times Roman font, or it's a very straight and kind of conservative font. It's the font that's used on newspapers. It's easy to read for the eyes. And so I showed you this so that you could see the difference in fonts. And it's quite important that it's easy to read for a reader. They don't want to have to like struggle to read this cursive, this squiggly stuff. It's difficult to read. And so you want something that's easy on the eyes, easy for them to pore over and choose you to interview. So there are some general rules for resume writing, and I said to you, print it on good paper, because even though you might be emailing it, you need to still print it to bring for an interview. And the paper that you print it on should be really like pretty much a heavy-duty gauge piece of paper. So not very flimsy like Xerox paper, but more substantial, so that it won't rip on someone's desk. It'll look like it's very solid. So you want to pay attention to that. It also should not be colorful, neon, with pictures or anything like that, because we as occupational therapists and anybody in the health professions are very serious about taking care of people that are sick or disabled, and we want to convey from our resume that this material that we're presenting to the reader is serious stuff. Graphic designers and maybe architects and, creative types, movie people will have their resume that's in bright colors, maybe with great font, maybe, I've heard that creative people bring a resume on a balloon, on whatever, because they wanted to show their creativity, and that's what they're trying to portray. We are usually healthcare professionals equals bankers, because we are both supposed to be very straightforward and serious. Bankers take care of money, that is serious, and healthcare professionals take care of sick people. So we are both very conservative, and all our resumes should show up on very boring, maybe white paper, off-white, maybe, and if you want to really get racy and edgy, maybe a light blue paper. That's going over the top. Really, this is a very serious piece of paper or presentation about who you are. Again, it should only fit on 1 to 2 pages, and all information should be accurate. Don't lie, and don't say that you were I don't know, at a facility for 2 years when you were really only there for 6 months. It will be found out and you will be fired. Resume should always reflect the truth. If you have a time that you weren't available to work, maybe you were taking care of a loved one, or you were traveling, you can still write down the right dates that you were working, and then you explain the absence in a cover letter, and we're going to go over that too. So that's where you can discuss why you have gaps in your resume or dates that don't, aren't just flowing, month to month. There might be gaps, but you just have to explain that away in a cover letter. Should also bring references with you on an interview, meaning they should be on a separate piece of paper, which is the same color as the resume, and the names of the person that you want to use as a reference, their title, where they work, and their email, how to get in touch with them. Usually we ask for 3 references. You could even ask for a letter from a former employer, and you could bring that with you. But it should never be on the actual resume. We usually say references furnished upon request as the last line of a resume. And that's to indicate that there are references and they are following the resume. So as it says here, supply on a separate piece of paper. So let's dig in and narrow down this resume design. Research has been done on resumes and how people pick people to interview from resumes, and it says that when people look at a resume, or even if they meet you, let's talk about the resume. So let's say somebody, the human resources person is looking at all these resumes. She gets like thousands a day. She has dietitians, janitors, nurses, all their resumes on her desk, and you want to make sure that you end up in the right pile. But the research shows that it takes about less than a minute to look at a piece of paper, a resume, and know whether it's easy to read and whether it's compelling enough to bring you in for an interview. So it's really important, again, to understand how the design is worked and how the reader reads it. So I said this before about margins. So you want to make sure that you're picking a margin that, again, between 0.5 and 1 inch, so that there's not too much margin and not too little margin. It's got to really be just right. And there is a reason for this, because again, the research shows that a human eye can read a line length faster than a long span of text. So you want to make sure that the margin only goes so far, because if it goes too far out, then it's really much harder on the reader to read it. So for instance, look at how newspapers are set up. Look at how books are set up. They're set up in a way so that it's really easy to read. And so that is why they're designed like that, so that the reader keeps reading and it's not straining them. So that was part of the margin piece. I just switched I'm sorry, but I think that I can't go back, but the last slide said something about text. I forgot, but it was really mostly about, bullets. So when we're designing a resume, it's really good to use those bullet points that I showed you before, because those depict important parts of a resume that you want to really jump out at the reader. So for instance, when you outline using the bullet points, it's really saying these are important items, please read this first. And it really helps the reader not have to sift through all the other letters, but they go right to the bullet points, which really should reveal the person that they're reflecting. Now we get to the font piece right here, and these are separated into 2 categories. And if you note that the top, I had said Times New Roman, which is the most common for a conservative font, but it's also easier to read. That's why newspapers use this font. And any of these are really easier to read on the human eye. So when you're writing all the content in your resume about what your experience has been, you want to use one of these fonts in your resume as the content, the meat of who you are. When you're trying to depict like just top titles, like let's say your name, your address, the name of the facility, statement headings, you use these. It's called sans serif, And if you notice, these are very straight and narrow letters and print and font, as compared to the top one, which is serif, which has little squiggly thingies on the end of each letter. And that's why they depict these sans serif as headings, to use for headings. And one more thing is that don't use more than 2 fonts, 3 the maximum, in your resume, otherwise it'll be way too messy. So if you're going to you pick one of these, if you're going to use Palatino as the body of the resume, you should stay in Palatino and do the whole thing in Palatino. You wanted to pick something separate, you could even bold Palatino as an important point, but stick with Palatino. Then for any of the headings, like, I don't know, objectives, address, you know, something like that, where it's headings, dates worked, experience, work experience, that's a heading. So you should use one of these, let's say Geneva, and stick with that for all your headings. And I'll show you examples of this. Well, here's more examples of what I was talking about with the little curly Q for serif and sans serif, which is straight and narrow. And that's used for the headings. Again, the fonts, this is what I said. Be extremely consistent in the same font and make it go all the way through your resume. Don't use more than 2 fonts in your resume. Again, it's going to be distracting to the reader's eye. And your goal is to make it as easy as possible for that reader, because you want to be brought in for an interview. And in here, it tells you the size. You know, we want to be really careful about the size of your fonts because we want it to be really readable. And again, studies show that the size of a font, maybe this Times New Roman, is 11. It's really readable. That's why it's used in newspapers. So you want, again, you want this to be very easy for the reader. So if you make the fonts too big, it's much harder to read. It also presents almost like a strange presentation, like you didn't know how to line up your words, and it gives a reader a bad feeling about you. So, and in your head, you're trying to just fill up the space, but that's not good. Just keep it the way it should be. If you have a size too small, it's also harder for the reader to read your resume, and it looks like you're trying to pack in so many words in the space because you were told that it should only be one piece of paper. But then people jam in this content, and it's impossible to read, and you'll end up being in the left-hand pile, thrown away, and you don't want to do that. So again, here's the different fonts and the different sizes and how readable they are when you use the right size. There also is a notion about the quadrant test of like what should be included in a resume on what angle. So in the United States, we read left to, oh, bummer. I did it again. But we read left to right. And when you're doing left to right, you want to make sure that your most important information is in the top 1 quadrant of your resume. So we say here, let's say it's a square, and we divided the resume into 4 pieces. The left top corner should include your name, how to get in touch with you, your email, your address, and what you are seeking. You know, for instance, I'm seeking you know, an occupational therapy position in a pediatric setting. Boom. So here's the stuff, the information that you need in that top left-hand corner. As the human eye reads to the right in the United States, your second quadrant on the right-hand side, top portion, should be second most important. So let's say you couldn't fit the address over here, you could put your address here, you could put your phone number here, you know, so that's also important information. Then when you get to the third down here and the fourth quadrant of the resume, the bottom half, that's when you start lining up your headings like work experience, field work experience, volunteer experience. You know, you have your different headings, and then you write under each heading what you did. That's the third and fourth columns, portions of the resume. And like I said, the 4 main sections, this is the first section of what is the most important, your email and all of this. You know, like I said, you should always have the most important stuff on the first or second quadrants. And I wanted to say a word about how to get in touch with you. Let's say you're Jackie and this is your address. Okay, that looks good. She put a line through here. That even looks nice, just as a design tip. She wrote down here her home and her cell phone number. But the email, I want you to include your email, obviously, but I want you to be careful that it says it's a professional email. You know, I don't want it to say, L Davis, crazygirl@gmail.com. You don't need that for a professional resume. You're not crazy girl. You're L Davis or, J Coronado. So be mindful of that. That's really important, that you change your email so that it's professional. Same thing goes with your phone number. What if someone calls you and leaves a message? I don't want the phone to be picked up and hear your daughter's voice, who's 4 years old. Mommy's not home right now. So be mindful of that. You're searching for a job as a professional. Change the machine so that it reflects your voice. Let's go on to the next. So, all right, I was saying go back to the sections of the resume. So here's the another segment of the resume that also should include your education. So this is another heading. And then you want to name, you want it to be lined up so that the education that you are in right now is listed, and then you go back, backwards. So you list the level of education now, and then you say, the dates and when you graduated. Let's say you're going to graduate, expected graduation, but then you can line up another, let's say, another college that you went to before this one, and you got a degree in business. So you would write that, you name the name of the school, you name the place that it was, the area of location, and then you could say when you graduated, and you list that. So that's kind of how we line up a resume, is current first, and then you go backwards. Sure, list your GPA, only if it's higher than 3.0, because if you got a low GPA, no one's going to ask you, and you don't need to reveal it. This is a part where you ring your own bell. You're showing people gee, you should meet me. Check this out. And so you want to explain anything that you can in the resume that you do well. Also, you want a heading where you might say academic honors. That might be a heading. Or extracurricular leadership roles. That's a heading. So if you have different headings, and you can make up your own headings, then you want to list what are these headings about. So you said academic honors as a heading. Well, then you want to maybe put a bullet point here and then write, I don't know, A+ in all science courses. Something like that, receive certificate of excellence in business, association, something like that. So you want to say why you're ringing the bell, what it's about. If you're saying extracurricular leadership roles, well, then you want to put that here as your heading. And then again, bullets that depict what did you get? What were the roles that you did in this leadership? What were the courses that you showed these roles? You're trying to name why you're saying this is a heading. So you're, again, ringing your own bell. So here is a resume. I wanted to show you how it's lined up. You see the important information on the top. You see the bullets. Here is interesting. They have this person made a strengths heading, and she put in, with bullet points, different parts of herself that she wanted to market and push on somebody. So she said that she's bilingual here. She has knowledge of developmental disabilities. These are special strengths that lend itself to occupational therapy that she wanted to really push for a reader to see about herself. You also see that when you're writing the education or even your work experience, you want to always start with the current information first and then go backwards. So you see here under education that the person went to Touro in 2007, but then before that they went to LaGuardia and graduated in 2000. So you want to make that very clear that it's the current first and then you go backwards. Same with, if you scroll down, you'll see field work is the same thing. She's missing dates here, but you need dates, the name of the facility, and maybe, you know, a couple of bullet points that show specifically what the duties and tasks were. I'm going to go to the next slide. Here you have, you know, what actually is underneath what the tasks were that you were involved in. And you want to always pick out something that's really special, that really sets you apart from other therapists or other students that are trying to get a job. This person put in the name of the facility, what fieldwork level it was, as you see. She used bullets, which are good. She put her dates over to the right. You know, you could choose any which way to make a resume, and there's resume templates online that you can use, and all you have to do is fill in the details. So there's no, you know, you could do anything you want. But this particular thing is very important. Since a resume is just a quick glance at who you are, you want to make sure that it's not written in sentence format. It's always written, your skills and your tasks that you're describing should be written in a very short, brief manner, and we call that paraphrasing. So, for instance, you start each of these tasks or activities with an action-oriented verb, and those really kind of lend itself to being dramatic about what you did and what you're trying to show people that you are you have experience in. So, for instance, participated, provided, those are action-oriented verbs, and you want to try and start every paraphrase with an action-oriented verb. So that it's not a full sentence. You don't say anything about I or me. It's always like provided OT services to clients working on self-care skills. Boom, the end, like short and sweet. So pick out like 3 things that you did or you observed or you participated in or you led, or things like that, that again speak to the reader and say, gee, she's good, I want to meet her. So when you're making your headings or talking about your work experience, you want to be really careful with your headings that they depict what you're saying. So under education, obviously you write about education. Then you might have field work, because this is obviously your OT resume. So you'll have your field work that you're in now listed, and then underneath that you say the field work that you did prior to this one. You might have another heading that's volunteer work experience. You might even have a heading that says related work experience, and maybe that was stuff that you were paid for. Maybe you were paid to be a counselor in a camp for children, so that's kind of pediatric experience, and you want to write that down. Maybe you have other clinical experience. Maybe you were in you worked as an OT assistant in a facility, and now you're going to be an OT. So, of course, list all the places that you worked as an OT assistant. That's certainly relevant clinical experience. So you can make any headings you want, and just make sure that as you summarize the tasks, you are very short and precise, and you use action-oriented verbs to start the paraphrase. Then you can also even have headings that talk about your achievements or hobbies that you have that are relevant. No one wants to hear about that, you're a good cook, but maybe you'd have achievements or awards that you obtained, in, I don't know, like I said, maybe sensory integration certification, or you did something that shows that, you won an award in school for being the president of the, student OT association, things like that that really ring your bell. you want to talk about, and you want to have a heading and then discussion, 2 paraphrases or 3 paraphrases about what you did to, what were the awards that you won, what were the achievements that you did. Let's see the next. Oh, this is, since I was depicting action-oriented verbs, here they are. Oh, look, I have others like initiated, launched, developed, maintained. These are all words to use to, have the activities that you're describing kind of jump off the page and, add drama to what you did. So let's talk about the biggest blunders that we've seen on resumes. And we can critique resumes. Well, obviously we don't want it too long and too wordy, because the person who's going through these resumes doesn't want to read all this stuff. They want to read just the precise clips about you, the most important. You don't want incomplete information, and you don't want the appearance to be poor. You want it to all lined up neatly, the margins carefully, everything very, very carefully aligned. Obviously, don't use any, check your grammar. Don't have grammatical errors or misspellings, because that shows that, the reader might think you're lazy, you didn't want to proofread your resume before you sent it. You don't want to give that idea to somebody. You want them to think, ooh, by this precise and very well-designed resume, this person might be an asset to my OT department. Of course, the cover letter we're going to discuss a little bit later. You don't want to have an inappropriate cover letter. That's why I'm going to tell you what to include in it. And you want your resume always organized, like what I had said before. Your name at the top, your information, your education next, and then your field work experience, and then your regular work experience, and then keep going down the line, volunteer experience. So it really should be organized nicely. Let's look at some resumes and, look at them and just at a glance, what do you think? This is a resume that we got in our office. I think it was for a physical therapist, but you wouldn't know it because it's not written anywhere. And doesn't it look like it's very disorganized? Well, I wouldn't want to bring this person in for an interview, yet this person might be the greatest PT in the world. And I'm missing out because his resume did not reflect that. And as a human resources or director of a department, I got a lot of resumes to sift through, and I'm only going to choose the people whose resumes are perfect. This is another, this is part of his, but I wanted to show you. He wrote things like chess competition. I don't need to know that. I don't need to know that he's self-motivated, enthusiastic, ebullient. These are just words, and I would hope that everybody has these attributes. That's a therapist. So this was not at all appropriate. But what I didn't talk about to you yet is where to put the references. And I mentioned a little bit, but at the end of every resume, you should put references as a heading, but do not supply the information on the resume. You just really want to say available on request, or references to follow, anything that reflects that the references will come after and that this is actually the end of the resume. It's not on another page. You're not missing a page. So people use this as almost like a the end little sentence, so that the reader knows that there's nothing else after this. Now, what do you think of this? Is this easy to read? Well, I would say yes and no. I would say yes because it's very neatly lined up. It's very well organized. You see the dates on the left. You see her name and information up here. She has beautiful font for her headings. You know, she chose work experience, education, volunteer fieldwork experience. So I wanted to show you how she, you know, kind of created her organization. But it's very small font. It's hard for me to read because, I don't know, maybe my eyesight's poor. So I wanted to show you that it's really not all about shoving everything onto one page. This certainly could have bled onto a second page, because I happen to know this person. She's an OT. She has had a lot of work experience in her life, and she's pretty outrageous. And if you read through this, you, as an OT director, will want to meet her. You would want this person in your department, because if you now zero in on the content, you'll see that she was she owned a photo store. She was a consultant to a photo corporation. Prior to that, she was an office manager and a real estate broker. She also worked in media, and she was in the executive liaison division. I mean, this woman, and then she went to OT school after all of that. So this is quite an experienced person. And you know, she talks about her honors in different societies. She has CPR and first aid. Then she started down with the OT stuff, like her field work and her about all of that she put in here. So she is quite, you know, experienced, and I want to meet her. You know, if she was able to hold all these positions, she owned a company, she knows leadership skills, she knows how to communicate with difficult people, she knows how to run a division or how to organize her thoughts. I mean, you know, this is an experienced person. What I do want to show you in this particular resume, so I agree that the font is too small, but she wrote here personal, and she's very smart and very skillful in like trying to promote and market herself. Because I tell everybody, never put in personal. No one really cares, you know, if you're married, if you have that, you know, 4 children, if you're a good cook, leave it out. But she wrote it because she did it on purpose. She said she's married 16 years, mother of 3 children, and this was an act of trying to portray that she not only had 3 or 4 lives of different work experience, but now she's an occupational therapist, and through all of this, she has raised 3 children, she's remained married, so she really can handle stress. And, you know, again, I want this person, I want to meet her. Now, how about this resume? Do you think this is easy to read? At a glance, I would say no. It's way too small, the font. I think that these margins are way too big. And what it kind of says to me, even before I try and read the content, it's like this person doesn't have a lot going for them. Even though they listed all this stuff over here, it seems like there's so much white space that it leaves me thinking, maybe there's not enough depth to this person. I don't know. Do I want to meet him or her? I can't even go through the bother of reading through this. It's way too teeny. And you don't want to piss off somebody that's trying to employ you. So you want this to be obviously a bigger font, more, much more margin. I mean, less margin, so that, you know, this is all pulled out to about here. And, you know, be mindful of the way it's set up. Again, this kind of resume is skimpy, don't you think? Look at all this white space. The margins are too big. There's not enough information here. He listed his work experience, but he didn't tell me what he did there. I need to know a little bit, something that sets him apart from others. So don't make it too skimpy. Don't omit things that should be there. How about this? Do you like this? I do. I think that it's set up really nicely. I think that here are the strengths included up here. That was a good tip, you know, a good technique. The education, then the experience. He used the word highlight or highlights. I like that. That's nice. Fieldwork experience, and he had bullets and talked about what he did at these places. This is nicely set up. He just actually forgot to put in here references furnished upon request, which I really, again, stress to put that in there, and then just don't list anybody on here. just put in those words, and then you have to have another piece of paper that lists the people that you want as a reference, their name, their title, where they work, and their information so we can get in touch with them to get a reference on you. How about this one? This is a resume that's, very old. It's written on a typewriter, but boy, I had to put this in here. Look what she said about herself. Okay, if you read through the first part, it says position held, and then she's listing all, she was an administrative assistant and all that she did, she used computer, filing, phones, but then she left because her boss was killed in a boating accident, and his wife closed the business and moved to Israel. You don't want to have all this, sad stuff in your resume. You don't want to use a sentence, because we only use paraphrases, and it has no place here in the resume. What you're supposed to be showing is what you did at each job. That's it. How about this one? Housewife until my husband became disabled. That's really sad. I mean, yeah, but you shouldn't include it in here. And if you're going to say that there's a gap here, fine. You just list, you don't even list it here. You would put this information, perhaps, in your cover letter, but don't include it on a resume. This one was, I left because I got married and moved to Brooklyn. There's no reason to put in this information on a resume. Really terrible. This person, now I circled all this, so I was just trying to show you, I was trying to put out a job inquiry for a administrative assistant, and this is what I got back. And I was circling it because I wanted to show you. He did not check for his spelling. The grammar is big. You don't want to have misspelled words. So that already was a problem. So it says to me that he's lazy. This one, he was, okay, he worked in a hair salon, fine. But pay attention. If he's going to capitalize Plaza Hair Salon, well, then the S should be capitalized. How about that it's indented here and not here? It should all be, it's uneven. It should all be nicely lined up. Misspelled word here. What else? Then he put in what he made an hour at this summer job. You don't put in the money that you made. It's not appropriate. And he even he listed McDonald's. Any work that you do is noble and should be there. But don't editorialize, gotta work somewhere. That's ridiculous. Be proud of any work that you did. And so that was ridiculous, and it showed his, I guess a weak ego that he's trying to, laugh, ha-ha. Don't laugh, ha-ha, on a resume. Just state the facts. So, personal interests. I said this a little while ago, but you don't want to include, usually, except for that other girl's personal info, you really don't want to put in personal interests. No one cares that you like psychoanalysis, gourmet cooking, swimming, dancing, or human lactation, which I don't know why it's even here, which is, breastfeeding. Why would she put that? So, this is not a dating service, and you don't want to put any personal interests. It's ridiculous. You don't need that as a heading or information on a resume. In the content, make sure that you're talking about your fieldwork experience, because that is the most important part. Since you're trying to get an OT job, we're talking about the content here. Now, when we're talking about content, you want to make sure that you're having perfect bullet points that really talk about what you did and what sets you apart from others, even if it's level 1. If you're observing, what did you observe? You observed evaluations, or did you observe residents in rehab undergoing OT? You want to make any of these much more powerful. So this person listed, observed evaluations, assisted with ADLs, transported residents. This can be a lot more interesting. What about assisted with bedside therapy and education of residents' family for proper therapy carryover? Well, that says a lot more than assisted with ADLs. You know, think it through. Think of what it really means to the patient and what it means to the family and what you're doing. Is it valuable? So you want to show value of occupational therapy. So these are examples of how I listed it in a resume rather than this. You know, it's important. Whatever you did on that field work, level 1 is important. So speak to that. You know what? Proofread. This is all about proofreading your resume, because when people don't proofread, it looks like you're really lazy. This was a person, I don't know, we put in an ad a long time ago for an administrative assistant, and this person answered our ad, but look what she wrote. Objective: to obtain a rewarding blank which enables growth. Now, a rewarding blank? She left out a word. It says nothing to me, but it does say, I'm lazy, I didn't proofread, and I'm just sending this anyway. That's not good. I'm not going to hire her or even meet her. How about this one? Now, this again is all my circling and crossing out. I did this, but I want you to see something. She wrote in here, objective: I'm seeking a permanent full-time position as a physical therapy assistant. You don't write a full sentence. No. So you don't start anything with I. So really, objective: seeking a full-time position as a physical therapy assistant in a long-term care environment, period. If you want to be that narrow about it. Maybe you want pediatrics. Maybe you don't know what you want. So all you have to say is seeking a full-time position as a physical therapy assistant in a clinical setting, period. Right? I mean, like, really, be mindful of what you're writing, but do not start anything with I, me. How about this one? She worked, okay, here's her work experience. Okay, she listed who she worked for, her supervisor, which doesn't belong here really. It should be on a separate piece of paper. That obviously she's trying to show her reference. But she wrote job title. She was a physical therapy assistant. But then she wrote, I did contract work with this agency, mainly in nursing homes. You don't write that like that. No, no, no. How about provided physical therapy assistant responsibilities to residents in orthopedic setting, or, you know, I'm just making this up, but I don't know what she did, but you have to be very specific, and it should be 2 or 3 bullet points about what you did at this, you know, in this job. Then she also wrote reason for leaving. You do not include that anywhere on a resume. You could talk about that in your cover letter, but not on a resume. So that's silly. How about this one? She wrote, reason for leaving? PT department environment was unsafe. I mean, you do not talk negative about anybody or any facility. That is so not cool. Really. So you want to leave, that's your business. Other people work there and they like it, and it's a place to help others. Don't cast aspersions about a place. Just leave quietly. And don't write it on a resume either. Now, this person also included her work experience at these 2 large companies that were totally not PT related. However, this is good information, but she needed a heading here. So up here, she could have written like related work experience, you know, as a PT assistant. So that would have, you know, totally combined these 2. But over here, she should have had another heading here that said prior work experience or other work experience, even other, because that says to the reader, this has nothing to do with PT, but check it out. Now, I'm saying check it out because she worked in Alexander's with a lot of responsibilities, but only for a year. Okay, she could put that in there. But how about this one? For 10 years, she worked at this bag company as a job title, billing and editing clerk. Now, that's a big responsibility for somebody, and I would want to maybe meet this person, if her resume was correct, because she shows that she has other work experience. She can work with others. They trusted her with money. They trusted her with billing and collecting information from other clients. You know, she had to be organized to do this position. So I would want to meet her. She'd probably be good in a physical therapy assistant role. But so I would really make another heading here so that it was other than this PT stuff, other work experience, and then, you know, certainly outline the tasks she did in bullet format so that's lined up, not like this, not side by side, because it gets lost and you want to really ring your own bell. She also needs to have down here references furnished upon request so that I know that's the end of her resume. Now, I have talked about references throughout this presentation, but I want to just say a little bit more. The references are always checked, so you should always prepare a reference list of 2 or 3 people that you know will speak well about you, and provide the name again, who they are, where they're coming from. How do they know you? Were they your supervisor, your colleague, the physician, the director, whatever? But you know, you want to tell them who these people are. And even if you can get letters of recommendation and keep them in your file, that would be good too, because after an affiliation, you know, and you did well, ask the person, your supervisor, can I use you as a reference? Can you write me a letter of recommendation so that I can put it in my file? That's really good to have. And again, here it is, references available upon request. I said, you know, pretty much over and over, you should always have this at the end so they know that it is the end of the resume. And a word about this resume, I would say margins way too big, silly, looks like this person is very like skimpy, not enough detail. Really, even the bullets are very skimpily written, not enough information given. So I don't know, there's a lot of other resumes I could look at, and I'm not really compelled by this. Now cover letters. So you always want to, the cover letter is interesting because the cover letter says, I am the curtain before the resume. I am before the star. So the cover letter introduces the resume, and it should be short and sweet, and with only maximum three paragraphs. Because this is where you explain why you're sending your resume. Maybe it's, you know, I'm answering the ad posted on Indeed the week of March 2nd, blah, blah, blah. You know, you're establishing who you are. I'm answering the ad posted in Indeed, March 2nd, and I am interested in sending you providing my resume for you to review so that I can, I don't know, so that I can work at, you know, have an interview or schedule an interview with you, period. So that would be like the first paragraph. So you want to show why you're qualified to seek, you know, to work at your facility for the job that you posted. So you could say the second paragraph would be, you know, I am a graduating occupational therapist and seek work in a facility such as yours where children are in need of occupational therapy services. I have done 2 fieldwork experiences with pediatric population and know very well that this is my desire of a population to work with for my career. So that's like, it shows that you just said to them that you had a little bit of experience in field work. You want to do this for your, you know, the rest of your life, working with kids. And so you're saying that in the second paragraph, why you should particularly qualify for that job. And then in the third paragraph, you're kind of just saying, like, I hope to hear from you soon to schedule an interview immediately, or right away, something like that, so that it could be just one sentence. I hope to hear from you soon so that I can schedule an interview, period. Sincerely yours, Lisa Davis. So I'm saying that it's really a quick 3 paragraph cover letter to introduce your resume, and then hopefully that person's going to be like thrilled to meet you. Here we go. No grammatical errors. Make sure you check it over and over. And this particular one should sound human. It should be full sentences. It should be honest, very big. It's really serious, and you're trying to show, look, I'm good. I'm great. I got skill. I have skills, and I want you to meet me. So this talks about what I just said, which is the opening paragraph, the middle section, and the last section. You should put your the date it's written, and a word about this: the name of who it's going to, the title, the organization name, and the address of the organization. Now this is big because people want to make sure that their name is spelled right. So if I were you, I would make sure you call or you Google who they are, who's the director of the occupational therapy department, what's her exact title on the website, because they usually are clear about who they are. They're clear about how they spell their name. So make sure the name is spelled correctly and the title is correct. If you just say director of occupational therapy and she's really the, I don't know, senior head OT leader. I don't know what her title is, but you should copy whatever her title is so that it looks like you did some research and you know who she is and how to spell her name. I don't know, people are crazed about not having their name spelled correctly. So you don't want to get on anyone's rough side. And the address, obviously, of the facility. And then you could start out, dear Ms. or Mr. blah, blah, blah. That's fine. And make sure you date it over here. And this is saying list your address, which is fine too. Here we go. Here's a typical cover letter. The person you're sending it to is Ms. Rachel Yater. She's the executive director, you see. Maybe I would have guessed she was the director of OT. You don't want to don't guess. And this is the address. Dear Ms. Yater, I'm a recent graduate of NYU OT Master's Program, and I'm seeking a position at your facility. Short and sweet. As my resume indicates, I have had fieldwork experience in a facility such as yours and believe that I can contribute to your OT program. I have a strong desire to specialize in rehab with the adult population and received a very favorable evaluation in my fieldwork setting. Well, that shows that this is important to her, and she's trying to convey that. I would like to, this is spelling. Woo! If you would like to, I would like to interview with you if possible, and I'm available to set up this meeting at your convenience. I look forward to hearing from you. Sincerely, Kimberly Thomas. Now, there's a typo here, and she should have read through this before she wrote it. Right here is the typo. And here is, a typical resume that is, I think, very nicely organized. It's the name, the address is written out like this, so it's all at the top. The objective is written. And then starting with the education, clinical experience here, other work experience, and even certifications are here. And if you see, again, what it should say, which it doesn't, bad Lisa. References, furnished upon request. I also used red here, which is bad, because as I told you, as an OT, no red. It sort of conveys blood, so you don't want to have anything red, which is not good here as part of my presentation. Sorry. I think that was it. We're not going to build a resume together. We're actually going to, I'm going to end this, but what you should be doing, I think, as the assignment, the computer automatically matches you with another student, and then you're supposed to read each other's resumes and comment on how it could be better, how it could be organized differently, how the wording could be, pointing out misspelled words, or whatever maybe it's great, maybe you like the margins, maybe you like the font, comment, good or bad, on it, so that people can get feedback from their peers about their resumes. So that's what the assignment is all about for next week. Okay, I think that's it. Yeah. All right. Signing out. Bye.